call was taken, and I'm going to take it right now. So I see Heather and Norm and Mike and Jay. Okay, I'm good.
And we are recording the meeting right now.
Okay.
Are others coming on?
I
Or
did
no?
receive
Jack said he was
notification from Nick and Jack that they would also be on the call, so that would be everybody. So, but I don't think they're here yet, right?
Mhm.
Jay. No, I don't know how to save this. Save it as, save in a recent folder. Choose a different folder. There it is. There's the whole report.
All right, I have it, and that should be coming back from the printers. We should have them back any day, because when she sent that to me, that was for, what she was sending to, so she'll have actually printed books at the ATM
Okay.
Saturday. That's the point.
Remember the good old days when we used to do it?
Yes. Yes, I do. Hi, Jack. I see you're there now, too.
How are you?
Great.
Here's the pie chart. And Jack is here. Jack.
Hi, Nick. I see you're muted. I can see your lips moving.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm late.
That's okay. Now, is that your office in Boston?
Oh, this is my full office in Boston. Yes,
I see.
this is my office in Boston when I'm really there. But let me. I'm
Yeah,
really
right. No, I recognize that view. I'm just,
Yeah, that's my office. Yeah.
Yeah. So what the reason I had convened this meeting was we had never taken an actual vote of what our recommendation was going to be. And when I sent Jay was kind enough to be on the call, so Jay and I discussed this morning when we were talking about the meeting that's coming up at 6. So depending on what kind of a recommendation that we decide to make, if we can only make the motion if we're not going to pass over it. So if our collective discussion or agreement is that we don't recommend that the townspeople vote for the override, then somebody else will have to make it. So Jay suggested he would have somebody from the school committee make the motion and second it, and then ask us for our recommendation, at which point I would share with everybody, the substance of what we determine now. So can everybody see what I have shared on the screen?
Mhm.
What do I do with it, Mike?
So it's Article 15, right? The motion as it would be written is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $803,338 for the purpose of additional funding for the operational budget of the Mendon Upton Regional School District for the fiscal year starting July 1st, 2021, provided that such appropriation shall be contingent upon the passage of a Prop 2.5 levy limit override ballot vote under Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 21 CG, or take any action in relation thereto. And the other thing I just want to pull up, this is from our FinCom book, from the different meetings and discussions that we've had. I pulled up some details that are in this letter, and Jay, hopefully it's all accurate. I checked it a few times. What it comes down to is what's important here is you look at the 803,338 number. According to our assessor's office, that would result in a tax increase of 77 cents per thousand it comes out to, if you have somebody whose property is assessed at $450,000, it would result in an annual increase of about $350, which is $87.50 a month or a quarter in the quarterly tax bill. Or for somebody who's keeping track for their mortgage, if they're paying escrow monthly, it would be $29 a month in extra escrow payment. So that's, I think that's the important information. So with that, I would open up the floor to anybody who has any comments or thoughts. And if anybody
So I
wants to.
guess,
Go ahead.
I would say, I have, since I've been on the FinCom, I have, very ferociously supported the schools in Mendon Upton. I have also supported the previous two overrides pretty openly, pretty clearly. I know we stated last year that given sort of the emergency nature of what was going on, that and the override was fairly small, that we felt pretty confident that that was going to be something that we felt was going to be appropriate. I know I have pretty significant concerns about the amount of the override. I understand pretty comprehensively the different budget drivers, I think I struggle, as I always do personally. My kids attend Mendon Upton, and I love the schools. I wish there had been some, instead of requesting new positions, given the financial state that the town of Mendon is in, a consideration of cutting the budget. I think if there was a smaller override, I would pretty openly support it. I do have some significant reservations.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in?
This is Nick. This is Nick. I'm happy to kind of offer up my comments, and I probably agree with most of what Heather said about this. Is that I'm concerned about the size of it, and rather than kind of looking for level funding, when the school committee is looking for an increase, especially in 2 years in a row of an override. I asked a question last year of Jay and the superintendent. Were they planning to come back for another override? And the idea was yes, maybe. But I think asking for increased versus level funding is very difficult, and we seem to be in this kind of continuing spiral every year. That being said, I'm also a bit concerned on how the selectmen handled this and not doing the 50-50 to this. I'm concerned about that as well. It feels like we're playing a little bit of game of chicken on both sides of the fence here. Not doing the 50-50 from the selectmen and the school committee reaching on their ask. So I have qualms with both sides of what we're doing here, and it doesn't seem that we've come to kind of a reasonable medium in my mind. So those are my concerns.
Well, I will interject and say that I had that exact conversation about not doing the traditional 50-50 or something close to that. When Jay and I were discussing this morning. The point is, we're at two extremes and neither one of them are workable. But of the two, I think our job is budgetary from the town's, from the school, but or from the town budget point of view, I have reservations about recommending the override at the full amount. So I guess unless anybody else wants to weigh in, I would just look for a motion to either support it or pass over or not support it.
Mike, can I say a couple of words?
Absolutely, Jay, please do.
I'm not trying to sway anybody's opinion because I understand everybody's concerns. I just think it needs to be understood that if this override were to fail and the budget that we live with is the budget without any additional funding from Mendon, it actually means about a $2.1 million cut to the school district's budget. That's pretty substantial. It means that we're operating on about a 0.87% increase from last year, FY21 to FY22. And if you put last year's override and this year's request together, it equals what we initially were requesting last year. It's almost like within about $10,000 of the same amount. I understand there were concerns last year with the request, but the needs then haven't changed coming to this year. Had we gotten the 50% number, yeah, that would have put the override at around 500,000 instead of 800,000. That obviously would have been a little bit more palatable number. I understand the concerns about the new hires. If you take them out, that probably cuts about $175,000 out of Mendon's request. So it gets it even lower. But either way, the needs of the school district continue to exist. And I really think what's happened here is the town is not going to do the 50-50 split because town government can't really function with only $315,000 of new money every year. And yet the town's budget's approximately 60% of the school district's budget, and the school district can't function on $315,000 either, let alone less than that. Level funding just makes it worse. So I understand your concerns. Don't get me wrong. Me personally, I don't want taxes going up either. I think everybody's had a bunch of it over the years, and I do think we have a problem long term that town government, school districts, it's not just us, it's everybody, can't continue to function with such a minimal amount of money coming in new every year unless we start making major cuts.
Yeah, I again, we've all had this discussion, and to continue with, just tell you the rest of our discussion, Jay and I had this morning. My personal feeling is that, way back when the state of Massachusetts encouraged us to regionalize because we were going to realize economies of scale, and they were going to make up the difference. And what's happened over time is the state has offloaded a larger section of their burden to the towns, and the amount of aid that they give our school district is anemically weak, if that's even a correct description, but it's weak, and it's a problem I think that they've created, unfunded mandates and the rest of it, but we just can't solve it with the current tools that we are given, and I think it's the only option that we can make, or the only recommendation we can make. I know, Jay, can you just fill in everybody in what Upton's solution to it is, how they're handling it?
Sure.
And what you see the next steps are when if the override fails, what is the next step in the process?
Sure. So first of all, the town of Upton, as many of you may know or may not know, they have proposed a new community center, senior center, library, a facility that they want to build next to where the VFW is in Upton. It's about a $13 million project. Their feeling was that they couldn't have that on as a debt exclusion and a school override in the same year and have them both pass. And they want their community center. So what they've chosen to do is they are going to fund the school district's budget, approximately $1 million. Their increase is substantially more than Mendon's. It's about $1.4 million. They're funding $1 million within their operational budget by not appropriating to stabilization and using free cash money, basically using one-time money. And then they're putting the other $436,000 to a specific vote, but still within the operating budget from free cash. And they're basically saying, we're going to use one-time money, we're going to kick the can down the road, and we'll do a school override next year, because we understand that it doesn't go away, it just postpones it. So that's their approach, and, how they're going to vote, it's hard to say. But they basically want to push it down the road. If this fails in Mendon, obviously this will be coming back in a year as well. I mean, we've looked at, how do we cut $2.1 million from our budget? And sure, there are certain things, obviously the new hired positions or the new positions we're talking about would be gone, but you're probably also talking of about probably 30 to 40 full-time positions that currently exist in the district. So you're talking about laying off maybe 20 to 25% of your teaching staff in order to get down to the budget what we need. So it would be pretty devastating. It puts the school district back where we were, say, in 2010, 2011, when we had all those cuts.
Jay, can I just ask, I know you talk about teachers, would there be administrators that would get laid off in that process as well?
Potentially, but quite honestly, if you look at our administrative team, we have about the same size administrative team that BVT has, except we have twice the number of, we have 4 buildings instead of 1 and twice the number of students. So there's not, I don't think they're going to cut me because I don't think they can run without a business manager, but they maybe. We can't get rid of the principals. You got a superintendent, you got an assistant superintendent who's also director of curriculum. There are some things, like people will say, well, why do you have co-principals at the high school? Why don't you just have an assistant principal? That could be done. That would probably save $10,000, maybe 15. So that doesn't solve our budget problems. You still have to go to your instructional staff because that's where the money is really being spent. So now the process, let's say it fails in one town or the other, doesn't matter which. If it fails, it means we don't have an approved budget according to the state. So that means it goes back to the school committee, who can do one of two things. They can either say, okay, fine, that's what we'll accept, make the cuts and move on, or they can recertify the budget at the same amount, at a lesser amount. There's a variety of choices they have. They can't go up, but they can go down. They would probably take that step. I'm not going to speak for the school committee, but I'm thinking they're probably going to say, well, we're going to recertify at a number. It may be the same number like they did. Let's say Upton passes everything and it's only Mendon, then they're probably recertifying at the same number because they're just coming to Mendon again. If both towns fail, let's say the 400,000 fails in Upton and Mendon fails, they may come back with a number that sort of compromises between those. That goes back to the towns to vote. And if they don't approve it at that point, then their options are either accept the budget as is or call a joint town meeting. That's what we always call the nuclear option, but that's the last straw that they could do, which would be a town meeting of all voters where the budget is voted up or down, and then the towns have to figure out how to fund it. So those aren't votes at a joint town meeting that are contingent on an override. It's not an option I think anybody wants to go down, but I think at the same token, cutting $2 million or more out of the budget is not going to be an easy thing to do. That puts us down, like I said, it's basically not level service, but level funding. And I think any town government will tell you that at least level service is what they're trying to maintain, is let's not lose ground. For us, we don't want to go back to, lose. We've done a lot in the last 10 years to become a really top-notch school district. You'd throw that all out the window if this fails. It'll go down to that kind of budget. You basically go right back to where we were and we start over again.
Has there been any talk with the teachers union, renegotiation of salary? I know that they're getting a raise, correct?
Well, so we are in negotiations with them now for a 3-year contract. Last year, we were in negotiations when the pandemic hit and we closed down. What we agreed to with them for 1 year was to give them a 0.5%. So basically, their 0.5% COLA didn't quite cover their health insurance increase. So they basically worked for the same money, and then they have in their contract that they get a 1% bump on the last day of the year, which creates a new base. We're in negotiations now, and I don't know where that's going to go. If anybody's negotiated with teachers unions, you know that it's really all about the money ultimately. And we're at that point now, but we haven't gotten there yet. Do I think the teachers would accept a pay freeze again? I seriously doubt that. I don't even know that I would recommend that to them.
Yeah.
Because in some respects, they're going to look at it and say, you want me to give up $1,000 a year so the taxpayer doesn't have to pay $350 a year. They see that as an inequity that they don't really want to take into account. Now, I'm not going to negotiate for them. All I can tell you is that without teachers, we're a really crappy school district. They're the ones that make it all work. And they have done above and beyond this year. I can't, say enough about what they've been able to deal with over the course of this year with remote learning and hybrid learning and cleaning and all the other stuff that has to go on to make this school year work.
So Jay, I agree with you. As a former teacher, I totally understand that and appreciate that. And maybe then that they will, need to have that raised. But then, are they also going to be okay working conditions where they have 35 kids in a class? Maybe they, don't have, there's less people on their team to plan with, right? So there's give and take on both sides. I understand that this is a negotiation. And of course, we want to pay our teachers. However, right, you can't every year, come back to the towns. Well, we need more money. We need more money. I understand it's a challenge. I think probably there would have been more appetite for this had there been any shift in the budget from the originally proposed budget. I agree with Nick in terms of the sort of gamesmanship, right, of how the town decided to fund versus, I feel like the school committee sort of doubled down. So, I mean, we'll let the voters play it out. I guess that's really all we could do. It's the voters who take the vote and decide.
Right.
I understand that there are repercussions for that. I didn't get a raise. My health insurance went up. I think that's the case for a lot of people. Lots of people lost their jobs. We paid for an override last year that was much smaller and a little more palatable to the town. This one is going to be very, very challenging to pass, I believe.
And I would just point out that, when we see what Upton is doing, there was once or twice when we did not pass an override and Upton did, and they went through with it, and then they just put that money aside. So,
That's correct.
they've got
That's why they
those
have all
monies.
that money in free cash.
That's part of the
Right.
reason, right?
Yeah.
As I understand it, Upton's FinCom is not recommending the use of.
That
free
is
cash
correct.
funds. Is that
Just for
correct?
the 400,000 though. They
That's
are for $1 million.
Well, it's because it's right. They built it into their budget. So what happened is the select board created the budget, and because that's how it works, and the FinCom is recommending the budget with that $1 million in it.
So,
But they're not recommending the article for their version of the override, which is again only 400,000 versus 803 for us for what for the if there's an equivalency. But
I mean,
all right, so at this point, I'd be
My
looking.
kind of comment, I'm just looking
Sure.
at the big picture that Jay sort of hit on it. The comment about multiple years of overrides, it's really not true. I mean, the last big override was, what, 6 years ago, Jay?
2015. For
Exactly.
FY16.
Exactly. And at the time, I talked to the superintendent, he said, about every 5 years, we're going to need a big override. So even though there was an override last year, in the big picture, it was a compromise, and it's just combined into 2 years instead of one. I totally disagree with the selectmen, basically giving the schools 0%. I mean, you can't operate like that. That's crazy. I mean, I sort of agree, maybe we could have compromised, but I mean, I have to side for the override based on the choice. It's just crazy, but I mean, I understand the school system, certainly you have to have teachers, good teachers. You can't have teachers go 2 years without a raise and be competitive. They're going to go to different towns. I mean, just not, my wife works in the school system, as you know, Jay, and she got the 2% raise, this year. So it's just, I mean, she's a para, but
It's ridiculous.
other towns pay way more. I mean, you got to be competitive. You can't have teachers making that kind of money. I mean, I'm going to support the override. And just as a side note, I don't have kids in the school system anymore. So, and I still believe that to have a good town, you have to have a good school system. You can't go back to 2010. I mean, that would be a disaster.
I was hopeful that they would recertify at the lower number, so it would be a more palatable thing.
Yeah, but I mean, it sounds like Jay was saying without the extra ads, would be about 650 maybe, Jay, something like that.
Probably, yeah. And, you know, in addition, the money that we budgeted and reserved for salary increases is only a little over $430,000. So even that would you'd still be looking at an override for a level service budget.
Right,
Without anything and no raises. And I don't think you're going to go there with that.
right.
I think as employees, what we're in this vicious cycle where we have this, you know, we had a substantial override in 2015. And then for 2 or 3 years, we kind of scrape along, and then we start to use as much as we can to avoid it till we get to the point where we don't have any choice but to come back again. And it goes back to when you only have $600,000 in new money, and you're talking about between the school district and the town, pretty substantial budgets. The cost of running these things is exceeding what you've got for revenue coming in within the limits of Prop 2.5, and that's something we can't fix.
Exactly. I mean, really, the root cause of the problem is the revenue, right? And it doesn't seem like the town spends enough time on increased revenue, and the towns in general against any development. So it's not going to go away anytime soon.
Mike, I'm going to interrupt you. I kind of have to bow out of this one to go on to that 6 o'clock meeting.
Yes.
So I joined to answer questions if there is any. I understand the committee's going to do what it feels is best, and I'm okay with that. We'll deal with it. It's a town meeting like always. You know, that's just the way it works. Is there any other quick questions I can answer for anybody? All right, well then maybe I'll see you at 6. Otherwise, I'll see you all Saturday. We're holding this meeting Saturday unless it's pouring. I'm telling you that right now. I want to get this thing done.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Jay.
Chair, bring an umbrella. All right, thanks. See you guys later.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion from someone to either support or pass over.
I'll make the motion to pass over this warrant article.
All right, do I have a second?
I second that.
Who was that? Nick?
Yep.
All right. Motion's been made and seconded. We don't have many more discussion, so just a roll call vote for to support this, to support passing it over.
Jack, aye on passing it over.
Jack, yes.
Mike Mandelea, aye, pass over.
Norm?
Norm, nay.
Okay. Heather?
Oof, this is tough.
Yep. Heather?
Nay.
Okay. Nick?
Aye.
Yes, okay, so we got 3 yes, 2 no.
All right, so we're going to recommend to pass it over. What I would request is that any of you who would like to send me an email with your thoughts, because obviously, you know, when I give the recommendation, I want to cover everything that was said here so that we make everybody understand exactly what, you know, what your decision, why you made the decision you did. So that when we just want to make it clear to everybody that it wasn't just a simple, you know, no, this is not and this is why. So, all right, at this point it's 6 o'clock. The other meeting is starting. So I just would like, we'll have to do the notes later. So can I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Hang on, Mike, did we post for the other meeting?
Yes, for Saturday?
Okay, so I guess why don't we not adjourn? We're just gonna have to log out of this and then log into the other meeting because there should be a different link for it.
This
Okay.
is,
Now, what is the other meeting, Mike?
At 6 o'clock, that Jay is holding a meeting to go over all of the articles. And, you know,
Okay.
it's actually going to give I mean, it would be a chance to discuss this issue that, you know, we're discussing right now. So, But either way, we're posted, so I have to go move over. So I'm just gonna leave this meeting and stop it and then go to the other one. Okay?
Thank you.
So there should be in your email, you should have a link there to go to that too. If not, you can go to the town webpage and it'll be up there. So at this point, I'm gonna leave.
Okay, so looking forward to see.